Hello everybody and welcome to another album review. Today we are taking a look at the latest album from Breaking Benjamin titled Ember. So before I start the review or anything, I just want to say to all of my subscribers and everything, I'm sorry that I haven't been uploading very much lately. It's getting close to the end of the semester for college, and I've been quite busy, so I haven't really had as much time to make videos, because usually I would record them on the weekends and then edit them throughout the week, but I just haven't had as much time to do that, so I'm sorry about that, but I will be trying to kind of get back into doing like a video a week or something. So anyways, Ember is Breaking Benjamin's newest album. It was just released last weekend on April 13th, and it's their sixth studio album, and their second album after they came back from their hiatus. Their first was Dark Before Dawn back in 2015. So I know that a lot of people, including myself, were very excited for this album, especially after like they started releasing the first couple of songs from it, which were like Red Cold River and Feed the Wolf, and that definitely got a lot of people excited because those two songs were very good. And so many people were excited for this album, and many were speculating that it could possibly be one of Breaking Benjamin's best albums to date. And so we're going to talk about whether or not it was and all of those sorts of things. And as usual, I'm going to be talking about things I enjoyed about the album first, and then things that I didn't enjoy, or just things that I think detract from it a little bit, and then my kind of overall thoughts. So as for good things, there are a lot of good things about this album. One thing that I wanted to mention that doesn't really have to do with the album itself, but it kind of does, well, it's the album artwork. This album has probably, if not my favorite, then maybe like my second favorite album cover that Breaking Benjamin has ever done. I just really like it, and I think it fits the album well. As far as it being album artwork, like on the cover, I think it could have been done a little bit better. Like I mentioned in the video I did when they first announced the album and showed off the cover and everything, you can see the text kind of blends in with the cover a little bit, and it looks a little bit weird, but as for the artwork itself, it's really cool. As far as the music is concerned, everything on this album sounds pretty good. And as I usually like to point out in my reviews, the sound of the album and the production and all of those sorts of things generally sounds pretty good. There are a couple of questionable choices that I will be bringing up later on in the video. But overall, everything sounds pretty good. The musicianship and instrumentation and all of that on this album, the guitar work, the drum work, and the vocals and all of those sorts of things are also really well done. And I would say that this is also probably Breaking Benjamin's heaviest album, at least that I've heard, because I haven't really listened to their album Saturate and We Are Not Alone very much. I've only heard a few songs off of each. But as for everything, like including and after Phobia, I would probably say this is their heaviest album. And that is definitely not a bad thing. I think that the sound that Breaking Benjamin has in this album is really good. Still stays true to their sound while adding in some other elements. Well, not really adding in other elements, but kind of expanding on it a little bit, and kind of pushing the boundaries for like how heavy some of their past material was. Like, I would say that a good, like, at least half of this album is at least as heavy as some of their heavier songs from their previous albums, like Hopeless or Breaking the Silence and songs like that. And I think a lot of that has to do with the vocals, because the vocals on this album are really good, like I mentioned. I think this may even be the best vocal performance from Ben Burnley in any of Breaking Benjamin's albums. It's just overall really good. The singing and the melodies and everything are really well done, and the screaming as well, which is usually used pretty sparingly in Breaking Benjamin's material, appears on almost every single song on this album. And I really like the style of it used here too, which we haven't heard very much from this band, and really I can't think of a whole lot of bands that do it. And that's where it kind of blurs the line between singing and screaming, where of course there are some songs on this album that have just kind of your typical Breaking Benjamin scream, but then other a large majority of the screaming on this album is actually like kind of a mixture of singing and screaming, which I thought was really, really cool and added a lot to the album. And especially on songs like Tourniquet and Save Yourself and even Feed the Wolf as well have that kind of style to them. And I really liked that. And I also really liked the expansion of Breaking Benjamin's sound on this album. And even though it, like I said, it does still stay very true to it, there are some differences here and there. Like on the song Blood, for example, seems to have a little bit of a different style than something that we've heard from the band before. Originally was a song I didn't really like that much, but after a few more listens after the album came out, it's probably one of my favorites from the album. And then songs like Red Cold River it has like a really different like beginning to most Breaking Benjamin songs. And there are other examples of different things on this album, like the intro to Down is pretty unique to Breaking Benjamin's other stuff. So there are some different elements present on this album that haven't been on some of their other work. Another good thing is the lyrics, and while I didn't really notice a whole lot of like outstanding, amazing lyrics or anything like that, they do stay very true to Breaking Benjamin's lyrics, which Breaking Benjamin, I think, has kind of... A lot of their albums have very similar lyrics or use similar words in their lyrics. They are very Breaking Benjamin style lyrics, basically. And if that's what you want, then great. If you want something a little bit more different and maybe even what I would probably say a little bit more of like really, really, really good lyrics, then I wouldn't say this album really has that, but they work well enough for a Breaking Benjamin album. And then also this album does have an intro and an outro, which are Lyra, however you say it, and Vega, which are actually, I believe Lyra is like a constellation, and then Vega is like one of the stars in that constellation. And I don't really know exactly why they chose those names for the intro and the outro, but they work pretty well. I like Lyra because it's basically a piano version of Feed the Wolf's chorus, which I thought was pretty cool. It kind of leads well into Feed the Wolf. And then Vega is a pretty good outro. They're really nothing that special, but they work pretty well for what they are. And then something else that I actually forgot to mention when it came to things that Breaking Benjamin hasn't done a whole lot in the expansion of their sound is the song The Dark of You, which is actually a ballad, which Breaking Benjamin has done several of in the past, but this has sort of a different feeling and a different sound to it, kind of similar to the way that I feel Ashes of Eden had a different feeling and sound to Breaking Benjamin's other albums back on Dark Before Dawn. It's pretty much the only non-rock song on the album because every single other song is just rock song after rock song, so it's nice to break it up a little bit. And it's also just a really good song in general. And the final thing that I wanted to mention is the song Torn in Two. The reason I bring up this song is because it was originally supposed to be on Dark Before Dawn, but I guess it got cut at some point before release, because I do remember several, or at least one or two reviews mentioning it and saying that it was a song that was on the album when they reviewed it, and then I guess it got taken off. So I'm glad they included it on this album because it is actually a pretty good song, and I would say it is one of my favorites from the record. As for negatives, there isn't quite as much to say, I don't think. One thing that I mentioned earlier about the production, and I said there were some questionable choices, mainly that is the vocals. And while the vocals themselves are very good, the production and the effects and everything put on them may put some people off. I think they sound just fine the way they are, but they do have a lot of effects and everything put on them, and they sound kind of a little bit overproduced in some ways. It was kind of like that on Dark Before Dawn as well, but I don't think it was quite as noticeable. So if you don't really like that, then you may be put off by that. Personally, it doesn't bother me too much. But that is actually one of the first things I noticed when I listened to the album. And then pretty much the only other negative that I can actually think of is the length. And when you take out the intro and the outro, there are only 10 songs on the album, which I'm okay with that. I mean, there are a lot of good albums that have only like 10 songs or even less than that. However, with the quality of the music on this album, I would have liked, and the length only being like 36 or 38 minutes, it would have been nice for them to like put in another song, but then again, I would rather have less songs that are still really good than like more songs where a couple of them are kind of meh. So it's kind of a good thing and a bad thing, but it would have been nice to get like maybe one more song. So overall, I really enjoyed this album a lot. I think it's definitely better than Dark Before Dawn, even though I still enjoy Dark Before Dawn. I think this is an even better album, and honestly, I would even go as far as to say that I would consider this to be my favorite album from Breaking Benjamin. Most of you probably don't know this, but my favorite album from this band prior to Ember was actually Dear Agony, and then my second favorite was Phobia, and then Dark Before Dawn, because at the time those were the only ones I'd listened to, and like I said, I still haven't listened to a whole lot of their first two albums. But out of those four, Ember, Dear Agony, Dark Before Dawn, and Phobia, this is probably now my favorite. I just really like it a lot, and I think it's just a solid album from beginning to end. As for favorite songs, I usually like to list 3 of them. It's quite difficult to choose on this album because there are a lot of really good songs on here. However, I would probably say my 3 favorites would be Torn in Two, Feed the Wolf, and Blood, with special shoutouts to like The Dark of You and Psycho and Tourniquet. Which I think are also really good. So that pretty much wraps up this video. What do you guys think of the album? Is it your favorite Breaking Benjamin album, or do you not like it as much as stuff like Phobia or any of their other albums? Let me know down in the comments below. And that pretty much brings this review to a close, so I will see you guys next time.